Just be realistic. 3 little words. They weren't shouted. They were spoken with this calm, surgical precision in a room full of people I was supposed to trust. My family, their friends, my high school guidance counselor. All of them. Just nodding along, a business owner. You. Just ... Be realistic. Go to college, get a safe job, you'll thank us later. They weren't just words. They were a verdict. A life sentence to mediocrity served with a sympathetic smile. And in that moment, I wasn't just embarrassed, felt worthless. Like I was a ghost in my own life, and my dreams were so easy to dismiss they might as well have never existed in the first place. But they were wrong today. The only sound I hear is the quiet hum of the city from my office on the 47th floor. And that silence, that peace, that's the sound of my revenge. This isn't just another rags to riches story. This is the blueprint. I'm not going to feed you vague motivational quotes. I'm going to show you the exact, deliberate steps I took to turn that crushing humiliation into a multi-million-dollar net worth. Because the best revenge isn't petty. It's massive, undeniable success. The anatomy of humiliation to really get how I got here. You have to understand where I was. I was 18, and I was drowning in what everyone else wanted for me. It was a slow, quiet drowning, the kind where you don't even notice your lungs are filling with water until you can't breathe anymore. The moment that burned itself. Into my memory was a career planning dinner my parents set up. It was supposed to be helpful. 'Twas an ambush. My guidance counselor, Mr. Henderson, was the guest of honor. He was a well-meaning guy, but totally uninspired. He had my entire life mapped out in a beige folder. A sensible state school, a major in communications because I was a good talker, and then a stable job in middle management somewhere. A good life. A safe life. When he asked what I wanted to do, I made the mistake of being honest. I told him I didn't want to go to college, not right away. I told him I wanted to start a business. I didn't have all the details, but the idea burned in my gut. I saw a future where I was in control, where my income wasn't capped by a corporate pay grade, where I could build something from absolutely nothing. The silence that followed was heavy then. A soft chuckle from my uncle. A businessman, eh? What are you going to sell, kid? Hopes and dreams. The table laughed. Not a mean laugh, but a dismissive one, which is so much worse. It's the laugh you give a 5-year-old who says they want to be an astronaut. Cute, but don't. Be silly. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. It's a tough world out there, he said, his voice just dripping with condescending pity. It's admirable to have ambition, but you have to be realistic. For every one success story, there are 1,000 failures. If you're not, well, you're not the kind of student who typically excels in that higher risk environment. You're not the kind of student. The words just hung there. He didn't have to finish the sentence. We all heard it. You're not smart enough. You're not disciplined enough. You're not special enough. My dad, trying to save me from any more embarrassment, chimed in. He's right. We just want what's best for you. A normal job, a steady paycheck, a pension. That's success. I looked around the table, at the nodding heads, the sympathetic looks, the group consensus that my ambition was a flaw, a dangerous fantasy that needed to be put down for my own good. They thought they were helping me, but what they were really doing was building a cage and telling me it was a home. Feeling wasn't just anger. It was this deep, bone-chilling shame. It was the feeling of being truly seen and being judged as inadequate. I felt my whole future just shrink, collapsing down to the size of that beige folder on the table. Worthless. That's the only word for it. They'd passed their judgment and the verdict was in. I would never amount to anything. Here's the crazy thing, though. That feeling of being underestimated is practically a requirement for achieving something great. Steven Spielberg got rejected from film school 3 times. Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper because he supposedly lacked imagination. They were told they weren't good enough. That night, they didn't know it, but they weren't just humiliating me, they were giving me the most powerful fuel on earth. The spark in the darkness for about a year. I actually lived in the cage they built for me. I enrolled in community college for a general business degree, a compromise that made nobody happy, especially me. I got a part-time job at a big box electronics store, a place humming with fluorescent lights and the soulless beep of cash registers. This was the realistic path. It was safe. And it was slowly killing me. Every day was exactly the same. Straighten shelves of products I didn't care about. Answer the same 3 questions from customers all day and collect a paycheck that barely covered gas and tuition. The humiliation from that dinner had faded into this dull, constant ache of resentment. I was angry at them for not believing in me, but I was even angrier at myself for proving them right. I was settling just like they said I would. The thing that changed everything wasn't some grand epiphany. It was a quiet, rainy Tuesday afternoon. The store was almost empty. I was restocking a shelf with cheap headphones when a guy I knew from high school walked in with his father. He'd been at that dinner. He was one of the guys who laughed. He was home for the summer from his fancy university, wearing the sweatshirt to prove it. His dad was buying him a new laptop, a top-of-the-line model. They didn't see me at first. I heard his father say, "Get whatever you need for your internship." The partners at the firm all use this model, internship. Firm partners. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. It was a language from a world that I was supposed to believe wasn't for me. Then he saw me standing there in my stupid blue polo shirt with the store logo on it. I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes, and then this smug, pitying smile. The exact same smile from the dinner table. He didn't say a word, but his eyes said it all. "Look at you, right where you belong." In that 1 second, something inside me just snapped. It wasn't loud, it was a cold, silent click. The dull ache of resentment ignited into a white-hot flame. I realized my life was on a track they had laid for me. And if I didn't derail this thing myself right now, I would end up at a destination of quiet desperation. I'd become a ghost, haunting the safe life they had picked out for me. That night, I went home and dropped out of college. I didn't tell my parents right away. I just stopped going. The fear of their disappointment was still there, but for the first time in my life, it was smaller than the fear of my own regret. I made a quiet promise to myself. Not some loud, dramatic vow, but a silent, unbreakable contract. My self-worth was no longer up for debate. It wasn't going to be decided by a committee of relatives and guidance counselors. It was going to be forged by me, for me. That was the turning point. The decision to stop being a victim of their expectations and start being the architect of my own life. It was the first and most important step. The blueprint, step 1, forging the weapon of knowledge hunger, is fuel, but it's not a map. I had the motivation, this fire in my belly to prove them all wrong, but I had 0 skills, no plan, and no idea what to do next. Walking around with a chip on my shoulder wasn't going to get me anywhere. Real revenge required intelligence. It required a strategy. So my first real step wasn't starting a business. It was starting my real education. I became obsessed. My bedroom turned into a war room. The money I saved from quitting college and the little bit I earned from my job went to one thing: books, not textbooks. Books that held the keys to the world I wanted to join. Think and Grow Rich. How to Win Friends and Influence People. The Intelligent Investor. The 4-Hour Workweek. I devoured them, highlighted them, wrote notes all over them. They were like sacred texts to me. I completely changed how I consumed information. I swapped hundreds of hours of mindless TV and video games for hundreds of hours of podcasts and YouTube tutorials. I learned about digital marketing from Neil Patel, sales funnels from Russell Brunson, and e-commerce from countless channels run by people who were actually doing this stuff. I made a critical shift. I stopped being a consumer of media and became a student of it. When a YouTube ad came on, I didn't skip it. I'd screenshot it, save it, and try to break down why it worked. What was the hook? What was the call to action? How were they creating scarcity? I decided to focus on one thing: e-commerce. It felt like the most democratic way in. You didn't need a fancy degree or a pile of cash. You needed a laptop, an internet connection, and an obsessive desire to learn and execute. The price of entry was knowledge, and I could get that through pure grit. For 6 months, I lived a double life. By day, I was the zombie in the blue polo shirt. By night, I was a scholar of capitalism. I learned how to source products on Alibaba, the psychology of pricing, how to write product descriptions that actually sell, the mechanics of a Shopify store, and the dark magic of Facebook ads. I basically created my own college curriculum. Mondays were for supply chain and sourcing. Tuesdays, I'd dive into marketing psychology. Wednesdays were all about getting traffic Facebook ads, Google ads, SEO. That was the big one. I learned that you can have the best product in the world, but it's useless if nobody knows it exists. Thursdays were for operations and systems. Fridays were for financial literacy, profit margins, ad spend, customer lifetime value. I opened a separate bank account for the business I didn't even have yet. It was an incredibly lonely time. My friends were at parties. I was learning about conversion rate optimization. They were talking about exams. I was studying case studies of successful brands, but it didn't feel like a sacrifice. Felt like I was forging a weapon. Every article, every video, every note was another swing of the hammer, sharpening the blade I would use to carve out my own future. I was building my confidence, not with cheesy affirmations, but with actual competence. I knew that when it was time to finally make my move, I wouldn't be guessing. I'd be executing a plan. The blueprint. Step 2. The first victory, the $1,000 war knowledge, without action, is just trivia. After 6 months of cramming my brain, it was time to actually get in the arena. The goal wasn't to get rich overnight. The goal was to prove it could be done. To make $1, then 10, then 100. My mission was to make my first $1,000 in profit, not from a paycheck, but from an idea I brought to life. This wasn't about the money. It was a psychological war against the voice of Mr. Henderson and all the other doubters. My first business was almost laughably simple. I noticed a trend on social media for minimalist, eco-friendly home goods. Specifically, these bowls made from coconut shells. They looked cool, they fit the sustainability trend, and they seemed pretty easy to source. It was a niche, but it was a clear one. I had my product. I spent $500 of my savings end. My hands were shaking as I typed my credit card number into Alibaba to place a small test order of 100 coconut bowls. While I waited for them to ship from overseas, I went into overdrive. I built my own Shopify store. I called it Terra Vessels. I obsessed for hours over the theme, the logo, which I designed for free on Canva, and the product photos. When the bowls finally arrived, I turned my tiny bedroom into a photo studio with a white bedsheet and my phone's camera. The photos were amateur, sure, but they were clean and they were honest. Next up, traffic. I took another $300 and put it toward Facebook ads. This was the moment of truth. All that theory was about to collide with reality. I created my first ad campaign, targeting interests like sustainability, eco-friendly living, veganism, and people who followed certain home decor influencers. I wrote the ad copy myself, focusing on the story, handcrafted from reclaimed coconuts. Bring a piece of nature into your home. I hit launch. And for 3 days, crickets. The silence was deafening. My Shopify dashboard, 0 sales. Facebook Ads Manager. Money going out, nothing coming in. The doubts started creeping back in, cold and familiar. They were right. You're just a kid playing business. You're wasting your money. I was so tempted to panic and just shut it all down, but my training kicked in. I didn't have a tantrum. Looked at the data. My click-through rate wasn't terrible, so the ad itself was okay. People were leaving on the product page. The problem was my site. I stayed up all night making changes. I added customer reviews. I had to ask my mom and a couple of friends who I'd sent free bowls to. I added little trust badges for secure checkout. I clarified the shipping times. I rewrote the product description to be more emotional. The next day, it happened. I was on my lunch break at my dead-end job, refreshing my Shopify app for the 100th time. And there it was, cha-ching, that sound. It would become the soundtrack to my life for the next few years. One sale, $19.99. I almost dropped my phone. I didn't even know the customer. It was a total stranger, in another state, who saw my ad, trusted my amateur little website, and gave me their money. That $19.99 was worth more than any paycheck I had ever earned. It was validation. It was proof. It wasn't a fluke. Over the next month, the sales started trickling in. 1, then 2 a day. I tested new ads. I made a simple video ad. I started a little Instagram page. I dealt with my first customer complaint and my first shipping delay. Every single problem was a lesson. At the end of 30 days, I looked at my spreadsheet. Total revenue, $2,878. Cost of goods, $500. Ad spend, $950. Fees and expenses, $120. Total profit, $1,308. I'd done it. I had won the $1,000 war. It wasn't a fortune, but it was everything. It was the first crack in the foundation of that cage they'd built for me. I walked into the electronics store the next day and quit. Look on my manager's face, a mix of confusion and annoyance, was the first small taste of the revenge I was after. I wasn't just quitting a job. I was quitting the life they told me I was destined for. The blueprint. Step 3. The grind to 6 figures. Going from a grand in profit to a 6-figure business isn't about having a better idea. It's about pure grit, building systems, and sacrifice. The thrill of that first sale wears off fast, and you're left with the grueling reality of building a real company. This phase was the forge. It was less about glamorous breakthroughs and more about relentless, boring execution. For the next 2 years, my life had 3 pillars: work, sleep, and gym. That's it. The first rule of scaling was aggressive reinvestment. Every single dollar of profit went straight back into the business. That first $1,308 wasn't for me. It was for terror vessels. I didn't celebrate by buying something cool. I celebrated by placing a bigger inventory order and upping my daily ad spend. This is the biggest mistake I see new entrepreneurs make. They treat their business like a personal ATM in the early days. Your business is a hungry monster that needs to be fed constantly. My apartment became a warehouse. Stacks of boxes took over my living room. My kitchen table was the packing station. My day started at 5 a.m., not with meditation, but with fulfilling orders. I'd print the labels, pack each bowl, write a handwritten thank you note, and drive the packages to the post office myself before they even opened. My focus shifted from just making sales to optimizing the entire system. I lived by the mantra, what gets measured gets managed. First, I had to diversify my products. I couldn't build a whole brand on just coconut bowls. I started adding things cautiously, like bamboo cutlery, then reusable beeswax food wraps, then some minimalist ceramic mugs. Each new product was a calculated risk, tested with small orders and specific ads before I went all in. I was building a real brand around sustainable and beautiful homewares. Next, I got smarter with my marketing. I moved beyond basic Facebook. At D's, I built my first email list and started sending weekly newsletters. I learned that keeping a customer is way cheaper than finding a new one, so I put in a simple loyalty program. I started reaching out to small influencers, not offering money, just free products, hoping they'd share. Some did, some didn't. But the ones who did drove amazing traffic to my site. I even started learning basic SEO, writing blog posts like 10 ways to a more sustainable kitchen to get free organic traffic. But the biggest bottleneck was me. I was doing everything. The first step to real freedom was automation. I set up automated emails for abandoned carts and welcome messages. But the real game changer was my first hire. It wasn't an employee. It was a virtual assistant VA from the Philippines who I paid $5 an hour. She took over all the customer service emails, freeing up 3 to 4 hours of my day. That was time I could pour back into marketing and growth. It was the single best investment I ever made. This period was brutal. There were so many failures. A whole shipment of mugs arrived shattered, wiping out a month's profit. My Facebook ad account got suspended for a week for some reason I still don't understand, shutting off my main source of traffic. The competitor with a much bigger budget copied my best-selling product and started selling it for cheaper. Each setback felt like the end of the world. There were nights I'd just sit on the floor, surrounded by boxes, completely convinced I was in over my head. This is the stage where most people quit. The emotional resilience you need is insane. You have to learn to detach from the daily ups and downs and just focus on the long-term trend. You have to see failure not as a final verdict, but as just another piece of data, shipment broken, find a supplier with better packaging, ad accounts suspended, build other traffic channels so you're not so reliant on one. Competitors stealing your ideas. Innovate faster and build a brand so strong they can't copy it. The breakthrough wasn't one single moment. It was a slow, steady climb. One day I hit my first $1,000 sales day. I took a screenshot. Few months later, a $10,000 sales month. Think $20,000? My profit margin stayed around 25 to 30%. By the end of my second year, Terra Vessels had done over $400,000 in revenue, which left me with just over $110,000 in net profit. I was 21 years old and I had a six-figure business. I wasn't rich, not yet, but I had built something real. The foundation was laid and it was solid. The blueprint, step 4. The quantum leap to $1 million. Having a six-figure business makes you successful. It doesn't make you a millionaire. The jump from earning a high income to building a 7-figure net worth means you have to totally change how you think. You have to go from being an operator, grinding in the business, to being an owner and an investor. Working on your business and making your money work for you. My first move was to fire myself, not from the company, but from all the day-to-day jobs. The business was making enough consistent profit that I could afford a real team. I hired a full-time operations manager to handle all the inventory, shipping, and to oversee my VAs. I hired a part-time marketing assistant to help with social media and email. It was terrifying. My payroll was suddenly thousands of dollars a month. But it was the only way to grow. It's freed up about 80% of my time, which I then poured into things that would make a much bigger impact. With all this new time, I focused on 2 things: scaling Terra Vessels to its max potential. I flew to actually meet my suppliers in person, built real relationships that got me better pricing and exclusive products. I invested heavily in making the brand feel premium custom, packaging, a professional website, pro photography. My job wasn't packing boxes anymore. It was being the CEO, the strategist, looking at the big picture, building new income streams. This was the real key to getting wealthy. I knew having all my eggs in one e-commerce basket was way too risky. So I took the skills I'd been forced to learn and turn them into a new business. I had become an expert in Facebook and Google ads out of pure necessity. I saw local businesses in my city still using flyers and the yellow pages. I spotted a huge opportunity. I started a small digital marketing agency, using Terra Vessels as my main case study. I walked into a local furniture store and said, "Let me run your digital ads. You don't pay me a dime. You just pay me a percentage of the sales I bring you." It was an offer they couldn't refuse. Within 6 months, my little two-person agency was bringing in an extra $10,000 a month in profit. The third, the most critical part of the plan was investing. I had read enough to know that true wealth isn't built from just income. It's built from assets and compound interest. I started living on a fraction of what I was making and aggressively investing the rest. My strategy was simple and disciplined. First, I built a 6-month emergency fund in a high-yield savings account. This is non-negotiable. It's the foundation that lets you sleep at night and take risks elsewhere. Then, I maxed out a Roth IRA every single year. After that, every single month, a big chunk of my profits was automatically transferred to a brokerage account. I didn't try to pick hot stocks. I just dollar-cost averaged into low-cost index, funds basically buying a tiny piece of the entire U.S. economy. It was boring, it was automatic, and it was incredibly powerful. My money was now working for me 24/7. Finally, after a year of saving profits from both businesses, I had a down payment for my first investment property. It was a small duplex in a neighborhood that was clearly on the rise. I lived in one half and rented out the other. The renter's check covered my entire mortgage. It's a strategy called house hacking. I was basically living for free while my tenant and the housing market built my equity for me. This whole phase was a blur of spreadsheets, conference calls, and property viewings. But because I had systems and a team, I wasn't working harder. I was working smarter. My net worth wasn't just growing in a straight line anymore. It's starting to curve upwards, the result of multiple income streams and compounding investments all working together. Becoming a millionaire was no longer a distant dream. It was becoming a mathematical certainty. The quiet revenge there was no big moment. No banner dropped from the ceiling declaring me a millionaire. It was a lot quieter than that. It was a Thursday morning, was 25, like I did on the first of every month. I was updating my personal net worth spreadsheet. I linked my business accounts, my brokerage accounts, my retirement funds, and the latest estimated value of my property. I typed in the last numbers, and there it was. Total assets minus total liabilities. The number at the bottom of the screen read $1,001,450. I just stared at it. I didn't cheer. I didn't call anyone. I just sat there in the quiet of my home office, the same office that used to be a bedroom piled high with coconut bowls. I leaned back in my chair and a slow smile spread across my face. It wasn't a smile of arrogance or triumph. It was a smile of peace, of a deep, unshakable calm. The war was over, and I had won. The revenge I had fantasized about for years wasn't what I thought it would be. In my head, I'd imagined pulling up to a family gathering in a flashy car, waving my bank statement in their faces. I pictured tracking down Mr. Henderson and explaining in painful detail just how wrong he was. But sitting there looking at that number, I didn't feel any of that. The anger was gone. The resentment had just evaporated. Their opinions, which had once felt like the center of my universe, were now completely and utterly irrelevant. My success wasn't for them. It was for me. The validation I had been so desperate to get from them, I had finally given to myself. A few months later, I ran into my uncle at the grocery store, the one who'd laughed about me selling hopes and dreams. He looked older, tired. He complained about his job, the cost of living, how he was hoping to retire in another 10 years if the market was good. He asked me what I was up to. I didn't list my accomplishments. I didn't mention the businesses or the investments. I just said, I'm doing well, keeping busy. The conversation was polite, short, and we were worlds apart. We were living in different universes. He was still playing by the rules of the world they had all pushed on me, and I had gone off and created my own. There was no "I told you so." There was no need. The real revenge wasn't telling them they were wrong. It was building a life so magnificent that their judgment couldn't even reach me anymore. The greatest revenge is living a life they can't even comprehend. The real definition of success when I started this whole journey, my motivation was simple: revenge. I wanted to build a fortress of money so high that the arrows of their doubt could never touch me again. And in a way, I did it. The money is real. The freedom it gives me is real. But as I stand here today, I realize the money wasn't the point. It was just a byproduct. The real treasure of this journey is the person I had to become to get here. The scared, insecure 18-year-old kid from that dinner table is gone. In his place is a man who's resilient, disciplined, and self-reliant. A man who knows how to turn a failure into a lesson and an idea into a company. It's the greatest reward. Isn't the number in my bank account? It's the unshakable confidence that if I lost it all tomorrow, I could build it all back again. That is true freedom. That humiliation I felt all those years ago, it was a gift. It was the grain of sand in the oyster. Without that intense pressure, without that painful irritation, the pearl of my potential would have never formed. Their doubt was the rocket fuel. Their dismissal forced me to rely only on myself, to learn, to grow, and to become unstoppable. I've learned that success has very little to do with proving other people wrong. It has everything to do with proving yourself right. It's about honoring the promise you make to yourself in your darkest hour. My definition of success is different now. It's not about what I can accumulate. It's about what I can contribute. It's about using the resources and skills I have now to help other people build their own futures. I mentor young entrepreneurs, helping them through the same struggles I faced. I invest in their startups, giving them the belief and the capital that I never had. My purpose has shifted from me to we. The revenge story got me started, but it's not what keeps me going. Purpose does. Knowing that my journey can be a blueprint for someone else, that's the new fuel. If this story hit home for you, if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or told to be realistic, then you're in the right place. This isn't just about my story. It's about starting yours. Subscribe and join a community of people who are refusing to let the opinions of others write their life story. We're the architects, the builders, the ones who prove them wrong, not with words, but with results. And I want to hear from you. In the comments below, tell me one audacious goal that someone told you was impossible. Let's put it out there and hold each other accountable for making it a reality. Your past is not your prison. The doubt of other people is not your destiny. The most powerful force for change in your life is the decision to make your future bigger than your history. The person you are today does not have to be the person you are tomorrow. The best revenge isn't some petty fight. It is a life of massive, undeniable success. It's becoming so much more than they ever thought you could be. Now, stop watching me. Go and build yours.